have reached Ginormous. This is usually the part of the program where I tell you that the lights are bright and it is time for you to get up, move your body, and dance. I tell you that you live for this show, and then I tell you the name of the podcast, which is promptly listed at the bottom of your screen right now. The name of this podcast is Ginormous. That is what we are here to listen to today. But you know what? I'm not going to have a camera today because it is currently September 10th, 2025, but just barely because it is 12:02 a.m. You know, I was really looking forward to making a show today. However, some things got in the way and I did not let that stop me. I am going to say I'm going to take as much time as I need to for Ginormous today. I'm going to need to do it. I want to do it. I have to get it out of my brain. I got to scratch this itch that I have to do it and talk about what I want to talk about here. So, hope everybody has a great morning when you wake up on this beautiful Wednesday. And without further ado, we have a decent amount to talk about today, so I would love to get into it. So, first off, looking at your left on your screen here, for those of you who are watching, you see quarterback for the Michigan Wolverines, true freshman 18-year-old, freshly a little bit less than a month ago, Bryce Underwood. Now, in Bryce Underwood's two games, one's against New Mexico, obviously one against Oklahoma, in both games he has shown flashes, some more than others. Obviously, one went towards a victory and one went to a loss on the road to Sherrone Moore's alma mater. But you know something? I want to talk about Bryce Underwood today. I'm not here to review the games that have happened in the past or really give you a play-by-play analysis. I'm here to have a discussion on whether or not I believe the Michigan Wolverines, and look, it's two games, but whether or not I think they are using him correctly so far. So, when you watch the Michigan Wolverine games, and again, very small sample size, so I understand a lot of things can change as more people grow into their roles, and especially Bryce Underwood becomes a little bit more accustomed, or a lot more accustomed, to the offense that Michigan wants him to run. I understand that as an offensive coordinator and as a system in general, it is good practice to not want to rush your quarterback into anything and give him baseline, elementary, if you will, stuff that he can mention and that he can handle. And I understand that approach. I agree with that approach in most cases. But when you're looking in the case of Bryce Underwood, who, like I said, is a true freshman, just turned 18 years old less than a month ago, you watch him, and throughout two games, he has made incredible throws, showing incredible poise for a quarterback his age should not have yet. I watch him, and so far, I have yet to see him truly rattled. He may not have the most success right away. Obviously, last week was a loss against Oklahoma. So definitely he didn't make the winning plays that he needed to make in order for Michigan to win the game. But you watch him and he doesn't look like he's out of place. He doesn't look like he does not belong in the biggest spotlights imaginable. He's just somebody who has to learn a little bit of the college game. And look, I completely, like I said, understand that the Michigan Wolverines want to take this slow with Bryce Underwood. They want to give him a lot of screen passes, a lot of checkdowns, a lot of dump downs. Don't go broke making a profit. That type of stuff. Rely on your running game. Don't have to be superhero. Don't have to be a Superman. Don't have to be a superhero. You don't have to be wearing a cape 24/7. I completely understand that, and I agree with it, like I said. But looking at it, you look at Bryce Underwood and he just makes throws and he makes plays that somebody his age should not be able to make. And honestly, this is just my opinion, of course a lot of other people may disagree with this. I think so far he's looked more comfortable making intermediate throws and being somebody who is able to move the chains with quick gains and little chunk plays and getting those 15-yard passes for first down, consistently moving those chains, working the run game off of that. That to me so far seems to be what Bryce Underwood is strong with. And look, I'm not saying that he shouldn't learn checkdowns. I'm not saying that the defense isn't going to make adjustments and eventually you're going to have to take those checkdowns because the defense is going to cover those intermediate routes. I get it. I completely understand that this is something necessary that Bryce Underwood has to learn. I'm just wondering in my head, would Michigan in the short term be more beneficial, letting Bryce Underwood do what he's more comfortable with, and leading the team to success now. That way, he can have a taste of playoff football as a true freshman, and that's invaluable for the rest of his college and what I believe will be soon to be pro career. Is Michigan better off right now doing and changing and forming the offense around what Bryce Underwood is most comfortable with and kind of leaving the check down stuff to more of the off season, maybe next season? I don't know if that's kind of a risky game that you're playing there. I'm not sure if that's something in practice is the greatest thing to do for your quarterback. Matter of fact, I know it's not in practice the greatest thing to do. But I'm going to be honest with you, man. I look at Bryce Underwood, and he's different. He really is different. Like, this is obviously apples to oranges, but look at the NFL, man. Like, you look at Derrick Henry, and he can go with bad offensive lines because he is just such a monster. He's somebody who just takes something, turns it into, nothing, and turns it into something all the time. Shakes chicken bleep and makes chicken salad. Like, that is something that I see Bryce Underwood being able to do as soon as maybe the midway to the later portion of this season for the Michigan Wolverines. I really think that Michigan should kind of change their offense a little bit and go specifically to what Underwood right now is capable of. And one of the good plays, or one of the greatest plays that I saw from Michigan on offense that game, Bryce Underwood's rolling out to your left. He has a linebacker who's on his wide receiver. He's rolling out, acts like he's going to run, brings it right to the line of scrimmage. And once he draws the attention forward of that linebacker because he poses the threat of running, then he throws it to the open receiver who the linebacker or defensive back abandoned. That is next level IQ from a true freshman on the road on an SEC game, nonetheless, the Oklahoma Sooners. The Oklahoma Sooners. That is impressive. That's impressive to me. And look, I understand, but I really think that Bryce Underwood, maybe by his coaching staff, should get a little bit more consideration as to what they do within their offense this year. Maybe, just maybe, a lot of those fundamentals you wait until the offseason or potentially next season to do. I know it's risky, but I think for a player like Underwood, I think it just may be worth it. That's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think about that. So we're going to move on. Going on to the superior team in the Big Ten, wink wink, the Wisconsin Badgers, my personal favorite college football team. They had a good win over Middle Tennessee. Obviously not a good first half of football. Sloppiness on both ends of the ball. Nothing could really get going. But they really pulled away in the second half and showed that they're capable of being a competent offensive and defensive football team. And they really pulled away kind of with the explosive plays, the deep balls down the field to Lance Mason, their tight end. They did a really good job. And Danny O'Neal, their backup quarterback in the absence of Billy Edwards Jr., really showed out. And look, a lot of the media that day was saying there's a QB controversy. All I'm going to say is this upcoming week, we have Alabama in Alabama. And I'm telling you this, Luke Fickell could not provide an injury update. As of yesterday, nothing really surfaced today. This is, Tuesday. Technically now it's Wednesday, but as of Tuesday, he did not have an update or any further update on Billy Edwards. So as of right now, it's looking like Danny O'Neal is in line to start the game. And I'm going to be the first to tell you, man, I think it's going to be a problem. Now, look, I know I can get funny with Wisconsin. I know I can make little posts on Conti and Nick Instagram saying they're going to go undefeated. But if you want my real analysis, I do not feel good for the Wisconsin Badgers going into this game in Alabama with Danny O'Neal as their quarterback. Maybe I'm underestimating him. Maybe he's somebody who can rise to that occasion and pull off one of the biggest shockers of the century. But you know what? I just don't think with Danny O'Neal that's something that's going to be plausible. I think if Wisconsin has a true chance to win this game, they're going to need Billy Edwards there, and they're going to need him at his absolute best. I'm just not sure if Danny O'Neal can do that. And look, the Thomas Castellanos on the preseason said, hey, look, Alabama doesn't have Nick Saban anymore. They're not as scary as they used to be. In week one, they went out there and they proved it. Now, granted, it was against UL Monroe, but Alabama put up over 70 points on there. So definitely that's an offense that when they're facing inferior opponents has that edge to them, has that urgency to them. And you know something like obviously that is what Wisconsin is. They are an inferior opponent. They ran into a buzzsaw week one that was FSU. I don't know if Wisconsin would do good against FSU. So here we are. You know, of course, I hate to pick my favorite team to lose, but they have a puncher's chance if Billy Edwards plays. I don't even think they have that puncher's chance if Danny O'Neal plays. That's what I think, and my only hope for them is that they just don't get blown out. That's really and truly my hope for them. But, you know, we will see. You know, anything can happen. Anything has happened. And, yeah, for college football, that is really what I have to talk about there. We have a couple of more things that I want to get into today. We have the Detroit Lions coming off a loss this past week to the Green Bay Packers, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, didn't look very good. It didn't look very good. Now, I was having a discussion with my best friend D'Lo earlier today, or quote unquote yesterday, about this, and we really were talking about how we thought last year was their window, was their time to win. They had Aaron Glenn, they had Ben Johnson, they had Dan Campbell, who was still kind of at his best there. They were firing on all cylinders. They didn't, even though they had those defensive injuries at the end, we really and truly believed that last year was the year for the Detroit Lions. And this year, it's 1 week, and I've said it many times, overreacting after 1 week isn't bad practice, but they looked off. You know what I'm saying? And it could just be a transitional period. It could just be that this team is going to take a little bit longer to gel than normal, and it's going to be a little bit of a higher and faster, or slower process. But you know something, I don't know. Like in my opinion, Jared Goff isn't one of those quarterbacks who's going to elevate a inferior roster. He's somebody who needs a superior roster in order to thrive. And look, he still has the good roster, but he does not have Ben Johnson anymore. He doesn't have somebody who has that experience in play calling. And I'm not saying that the current coordinators now can't step up their game. I'm not saying that they can't do anything great this season. I'm still anticipating them to be, at the very, very least, a 9-win team fighting for the playoffs in December. But I think it's going to be a lot more of a struggle for the Detroit Lions this year than a lot of people think. And I don't know, I think a lot of people kind of just went into this season assuming that they'd be the same because of their roster. But when you lose both coordinators, both guys who went on to be coaches, head coaches in the NFL this year, the Chicago Bears and the New York Jets, Aaron Glenn has a lot of good things. They were very, very competitive against a very tough Pittsburgh Steelers team. Showed a lot of promise. And honestly, I'm not going to say the Jets are going to be great this year, but if they play like that every single week, I think they have a better chance of winning a lot of games than they do losing. And it may sound sacrilegious to say from a Patriots fan, but I mean, that's what I saw, and that's how I feel. I mean, Justin Fields looked good. He looked dynamic. Garrett Wilson played like the guy he's paid to be, which, you know, isn't always the case with wide receivers. I think the Jets have a decently good chance, and you know what? Chicago notoriously chokes like they always do, but I'm not going to rule Ben Johnson out just yet. Like, the Bears are going to be the Bears, yes, of course, but I don't know. I don't want to write off the Bears just yet. You know, they still have Caleb Williams, who me personally I don't believe in, but they also have Ben Johnson, and I think he's only going to grow in this role as a head coach and a play caller, and I'm not going to rule them out just yet. You know, it's not looking great. That was a bad loss, but I don't know. But kind of getting off, we got a little off topic there. Talking about the Detroit Lions, man, they're replacing everything, and they lost guys up on the offensive line due to injury and retirement. And yeah, it came back to bite them in week one. And I'm not saying every single week they're not going to be picking in the top 10. Their roster's way too good to do that. But I would not be surprised if it's going to bite them in the ass a little bit more than people think. You know, that's just my opinion on the Detroit Lions. Like, but I don't know. I think a lot of people who came into the season with the same lofty expectations as last year and previous years with Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson at their coordinators respectively, I think a lot of those people who feel that way are going to be let down, and I don't know. I guess you heard it here first on Ginormous. So, I mean, for those of you who listen and those of you who believe me, I don't speak the gospel, but I believe that what I'm saying is true. So, you heard it here first, folks. You heard it here first. So, to close out this episode of Ginormous, we have one more topic. We are going to talk about Drake May and the New England Patriots. Now, I made a post on the Conte and Nick Instagram page, gave a pretty detailed explanation of, after 1 week, what I think about the New England Patriots and the direction that I think they're heading in. And again, this is kind of a common theme. It's not healthy, in my opinion, to make snap judgments and make true judgments off of what you feel after 1 week. Again, previously going back to my Detroit thing, Detroit could prove me wrong and they could go 16-1, and they could win the Super Bowl. That could happen. But I don't think that will happen. And what will happen with the New England Patriots, I think this is going to be a little bit of a slower build than people thought. And look, I went into this season. Some people have said I went into this season with lofty expectations because I was expecting 9 wins out of the team. I was expecting a winning record. I don't think it was unreasonable for me to believe that the football team that has Mike Vrabel's, Josh McDaniels, and a quarterback going into their second year and expecting to make a little bit of a leap should be able to play a kind of a game manager style role. Now, look, I'm not saying that Drake May is a game manager. I'm not saying that that's how he needs to play, and stylistically, that's the type of quarterback that he has to be. That's not what I'm saying. I'm expecting Drake May to be Drake May, make the plays that he's famous for, make the plays that got him drafted number 3 overall, but be a little bit smarter, reduce the turnovers. That's what I mean when I say game manager. And look, Drake May, I believe, has the physical talents to compete with just about anybody in the NFL. I by no means am writing off Drake May, but what I'm going to tell you is I was not encouraged whatsoever with what I saw. I actually was at the game this past Sunday against the Las Vegas Raiders. It was not a good loss. Obviously, the scoreboard did not make it seem like a big of a blow as it was, but it really, at some points, especially in that second half, was not a very close game. The offensive line, in my opinion, while they did have their issues, they had false start penalties on Will Campbell, 2 of them, one very costly one. And there were a couple times that Max Crosby was able to create pressure and got 1 sack. But for a defensive line that has Max Crosby, and for the offensive line to say we did not let him destroy our entire game plan, we, for the most part, kept him in check as much as we could, I think that the offensive line deserves a little bit of credit for making it so Max Crosby did not completely take over that game. I think even though they did not play perfect, there's definitely things on film that you can break down and say, okay, this needs to improve. But I think for the most part, on its face, if you're facing Max Crosby and he does not completely destroy you like he has shown in the past he's capable of doing several times, including against you, I count that as a win. I do. And maybe my expectations are a little too low as opposed to it being too lofty in regards to the Patriots, but that's kind of how I feel. That's kind of what I feel about this situation. And yeah, look, I think that Drake May a lot of times got out of the pocket when he didn't need to. I think that he looked a little bit sped up, a little bit hurried. And look, I understand he's still a young player. He's still somebody who's going to make mistakes, but I think at this point, there are some fundamental things as a quarterback that you should be a little bit more mature in going into your second year. Right now, he played like a rookie. Or this past Sunday, he played like a rookie. He played scared. And look, a lot of people are going to say, well, look, last year he didn't have the greatest coaching staff. Last year he didn't have this. That is true. I will not say that he had the best coaching staff because he had, in my opinion, the worst coaching staff in the NFL. Or if not worst, top 3 worst. But Drake May had this offseason to work with Josh McDaniels. These things do take time, but I am expecting just a little bit of progress to be shown. And in my opinion, I didn't see it. I just did not see any progress from Drake May at the end of last year into the beginning of this year. And again, like I can't emphasize enough how how am I trying to say here? I can't emphasize enough how much I want Drake May to succeed and how much I'm willing to be patient with him. But I do think it's important that while being patient, you still do have a certain level of expectation. And I think, in my opinion, saying Drake May, oh, it's early, it's early, it's early, you got to give him time, you got to give him time, in a way, I think that kind of absolves him of the mistakes that he makes. And now, I'm not saying that people aren't holding him accountable. I'm not saying that people, think he's the perfect guy and like kind of want to keep the training wheels on him. That's not what I'm saying. I know there are a lot of people who say be patient, but also hold him accountable for his mistakes. But I do think, in a way, just always saying, hey, look, it's early, I do think you're kind of protecting him a little bit. And that's just my opinion. Look, like, unfortunately, I think we may be in the age where a lot of these guys have to be coddled. So I'm not saying, don't coddle him because, Bill didn't coddle Mac Jones and look at what happened there. But, I do think that as the quarterback of the team, there is a certain level of expectations that you have to meet. And after 1 week, he was still playing like a rookie as a sophomore. And that's what I saw. I'm not trying to tell you he sucks. I do not think he sucks. I think he's going to be, at the very least, a serviceable starting quarterback in the NFL. I really do think he just has that pure ability to carry him to that level of success by default. But you know what? If things don't change and if he doesn't work on himself, I don't know. Like, I don't know how patient Mike Vrabel and the New England Patriots will be with him because Mike Vrabel has expectations of winning. And he knows this is a rebuild. He knew what he was getting himself into. But if you're Mike Vrabel, and honestly, let's be honest with ourselves, if you're the head coach of the NFL, you're going to want to win. And if Drake May's not doing the things to make you win and actually making you losing and contributing to losing football, I don't know how patient as a head coach, specifically Mike Vrabel, or honestly, any one of you guys would be. Excuse me. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my take on that. I don't want to talk in circles here about Drake May. And look, I'm not going to say I'm concerned. I'm not going to say I'm panicking. But, we better beat the Dolphins this week. And Drake May doesn't need to be perfect. As a matter of fact, I will grant him the ability to make some mistakes. But he better look better than he did last week. He at least should do complimentary football right. That is not a skill issue. It does not take skill, in my opinion, to do complimentary, very basic football if you're going to be an NFL player. And those who cannot do it end up being backups, and those who really cannot do it end up out of the league. I do not believe that's the level that Drake May is at. I do not believe that is the talented quarterback that Drake May is. So guess what? I expect him to be good with complimentary football. But yeah, that's what I have to say today. Again, it was no video. It was strictly an audio. You can still see the thumbnail. But yeah, I think this was a really good episode. We covered a lot of ground, a lot of football, a lot of things going on in the world of WWE that pretty soon I would love to talk about. We got WrestlePalooza coming up. I would love to get into that soon. This has been Ginormous episode number 16. Folks, thank you for listening. Have a good rest of your night, or, have a good morning because it is Wednesday, September 10th. Peace out. Have a great rest of your day.